Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto became overpowered god. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke stood face to face. A small leaf floated downwards. It drifted down to the soil and the impromptu deathmatch began. Chakra, the worlds had not felt since times of Otsutsuki Hagoromo, flooded from their cores. The earth buckled and shattered under their feet, not being able to handle the pressure. The Uchiha opened his left eye as it pulsed in power. Layers upon layers of illusionary techniques invaded into Naruto's chakra network, shattering upon entrance. His chakra was constantly fluctuating, changing, disrupting. It seemed genjutsu was futile. The Uchiha scoffed. Only his most powerful illusionary techniques would have effect. The yellow-haired speed demon sped forward, shattering the sound barrier in a matter of a second. He was not surprised, he was half of a god. He reached the Sharingan user in the blink of an eye. Despite the terrifying speed that was just displayed, the Uchiha was not deterred. They collided in a furious match of strength and speed. Punches strong enough to create earthquakes, kicks fast enough to split mountains rang through the desolate field. Their chakra was affecting the nature, animals and people. It was truly a battle of gods. The ninjas of various villages could only stare in awe, fear and reverence at such a monstrous duel. Both of the surviving members of their respective clans shot backwards miles. They kicked it up a notch. Naruto's eyes gained a red tint around them, his pupils turning vertical. The respected sage mode. The Uchiha's eyes swirled with dark power. A red six-sided star with a motif formed in his eyes. The feared eternal Mangekyo Sharingan came forth. They weren't done. The Rokudame Hokage summoned forth a blazing orange and black cloak that covered his body. Stronger than before his fusing with Asura's and Hagoromo's chakra. The Uchiha didn't disappoint. His left eyes pulsed with ungodly chakra. Concentric rings formed and his eye turned magenta. Everyone weaker than Chunin across the whole continent were brought to their knees by the combined chakra the two were exerting. Jonin and Anbu could feel their knees buckle, just managing to stay upright. The only one barely affected were those above cage level. They were at their strongest human forms. The Uchiha looked into the skies as he channeled absurd amounts of chakra into his left eye. 3 gigantic meteors formed and were plummeting at frightening speeds to the earth. Naruto smirked, preparing for his technique. The chakra he was releasing creating shockwaves and upheavals. He exhaled and sped forward, appearing in the skies before the meteorites. He pumped more chakra than humanly possible through his tenketsu. He punched forwards, the energy being released, making Tsunade's punches look like love taps. It created a deafening explosion. As it reached the colossal stones, they abruptly stopped midair and shattered into pieces. He flexed his monstrous chakra and the remains disintegrated. This had all happened in the matter of 10 seconds. He didn't stop. He lifted his hand and in a flash a spiraling ball of doom appeared. Adding his wind-natured chakra, it gained sharp edges, looking similar to a shuriken. He wasn't finished. Tunneling his electric-natured chakra into it turned it completely white and made it spark. He threw it forward. It blazed to his opponent and hit its mark. It erupted with a bright flash and a screeching bang. He continued, conjuring up 4 clones, all of them creating their one variant of the deadly technique. 4 were created, 1 with fire, 1 with water, 1 with earth, and 1 with lightning. The last one was created by himself. It started slowly. Blue, red and black particles collided together in his hand as he lifted it up above his head. He compressed it, and it turned dark purple, forcing more chakra into it. It grew in size, growing even bigger than the meteorites his enemy had conjured, and he wasn't done. His final and strongest element covered the purple ball, wind. Lastly, he added Shukaku's specialty, magnet release. The technique was straining, barely being held together even with all of his power. He and his companion, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, heaved and threw it forward. His copies following, he used the chakra-saturated air to make the 4 smaller variants spin around the Bijudama. He gasped and spoke his first words since the battle started. Sage Art. Universal Bijudama Rasenshuriken. It reached his opponent in the blink of an eye, leaving no time to teleport or dodge. He knew the Uchiha was resourceful. The technique would not kill him, but it was worth the try. It was just a distraction after all. He felt the Uchiha's chakra pulse, controlled, quick and dark. It pulsed and destroyed miles of nature in his haste to defend. Sasuke forced more chakra into his eye as it started bleeding. He opened a rip in time and space big enough for the Kyuubi itself to fit in. It was impossible to live after such a technique otherwise. Naruto coughed up blood and looked up in the skies. This was it. They were evenly matched, their strengths perfectly matching each other. He smiled and threw his father's special kunai downwards and flashed it, landing on the ground. He slowly moved through the seals. The Uchiha was occupied defending against his technique. This was the duty of the cages, like all before him had done. He would do the same. He clapped. The combined chakra of Naruto and all the tailed beast burst forth from his body. He spoke, his voice raw with emotion. Fuinjutsu. Shiki Fujin. His life sped before his eyes, stealing the scroll of seals and learning the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, defeating and pulling Gaara out from his personal nightmare, traveling with his perverted godfather, fighting Nagato and making him see that violence and pain wasn't the only way, and finally to his last and final battle. His eyes hardened, there was no other option. The Shinigami drifted from the dead soil, its chakra covering everything around it, dark and deadly, even suppressing the chakra Naruto and the Biju were releasing. Naruto shivered and looked at the Shinigami. They did not have need for words. The Shinigami knew why it was summoned, and Naruto accepted the price he needed to pay. The god of death flexed its power and time stopped. It moved forward, piercing its incorporeal arms through Naruto's stomach and grabbing a hold of Sasuke through the rip of time and space. Sasuke's soul was ripped from his body. The god pulled his arms backwards and through Naruto. The rip in time and space was not affected by the Shinigami. It was a rip in time after all. The Shinigami's power only strengthening the technique multiple times. It quintupled in size as it started absorbing everything around it. Naruto felt the pull and he could do nothing about it. His body was stopped in time too. The Shinigami wouldn't allow it, pulling on Naruto's soul with all of its might, ripping it from his frozen body, not expecting a piece of its own power that was the base of Naruto's seal to resist against the pull. The Shinigami roared and pulled harder. The seal snapped. The chakra of all the tailed beast exploded outwards, swirling around Naruto's soul. The seal was designed to slowly absorb Kurama's chakra, the power of the tailed beast and the piece of the Shinigami's essence only strengthening that effect. Namikaze Minato was indeed a genius. He had left nothing untouched, creating a fail-safe to activate when the seal was forcefully destroyed to absorb the chakra, yet he could not have known the effect of the god's power and his son's will. In a matter of seconds his soul stabilized, absorbing all of the Biju and the Shinigami's essence. The Shinigami lost its concentration for barely a millisecond as power even Otsutsuki Kagaya could not comprehend exploded from the pulsing soul. Its slip in concentration was enough. The rip in time won. Sucking up Naruto's soul, his body and Sasuke's body. The Shinigami howled, its energy ripping the world asunder. The terrifying rip in time and space also absorbing the energy the Shinigami was releasing. The rip in time suddenly stopped, and imploded. The infuse of the power of the world. Uchiha Sasuke. Uzumaki Naruto. All the Biju and the essence of the Shinigami was enough to destroy the universe. Not a sound was made. It was gone, just like that. Not a terrifying explosion, it just disappeared. Without the power of the world and nature the Shinigami could not stay in existence. It was removed, not having any use anymore. Death was a part of nature, and nature had ceased to exist. Uzumaki Naruto was confused, simply said. 1 second he had summoned the Shinigami and everything was going to plan, the next second he was gone. No, he still existed, he was more than before. He felt the Biju's chakra forcefully being pressed into him, along with the Shinigami's, Sasuke's and almost all the nature chakra the world had to offer. How had he not been completely obliterated? Why was he so calm? Was it a side effect of having every ounce of chakra the world had to offer absorbed into his being? Further investigating needed. Why was it so dark? He questioned himself. Opening his eyes, did he still have eyes? The complete darkness concluded that he still had those. Good to know. He was drifting to a rip of something, of time and space, he guessed. He felt an abnormally strong pull. He looked around him. Darkness and an occasional white rip in the walls was all the eye could see. He looked forwards, seeing a white lightning-shaped rip in the walls of time and space. The closer he moved the stronger the pull got, concluding that this rip was pulling him in. He started swimming through the darkness. literally swimming. He could feel Gaara's deadpan stare already. The closer he got to the biggest rip, the stronger the pull got, until eventually he had no control over his soul anymore and was sucked into it. Uzumaki Naruto awoke to the blinding light of the sun, drifting on a water stream. He sighed and relaxed, looking up. The deafening sound of a waterfall filled his ears. "Waterfall!" he screamed. He reached the end of the stream and plummeted down the waterfall just as the words left his lips. Looking around him quickly, he saw the enormous statues of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. He was at the Valley of the End, but that was impossible. Sasuke had destroyed the valley in their battle against the Rabbit Goddess. A minuscule amount of chakra, minuscule in his eyes, in reality it was more than most Anbu had, poured from his tenketsu as he suddenly stopped midair, making sure to keep the chakra close to him. He sighed in relief, glad to still have his chakra. He touched down next to the waterfall and looked in his reflection in the water. What looked back surprised him. He had at least grown a few inches. His jawline had sharpened and his hair had turned a pale yellow, more reminiscent of a Yamanaka's. He looked closer, and noticed that the roots were a pure white. His eyes had changed too. They looked sharper, and more importantly he saw 3 Magatama spinning around lazily in a sea of red. He had the Sharingan. It must have been an after effect of being fused with Sasuke's chakra. The most surprising were his whisker marks, rather the lack of them. Again, how was he so damn calm about it? He huffed and sat down. Being finished inspecting the outside, he checked his chakra reserves, feeling his normal gigantic one that had grown significantly, and beyond that a pool, more like an ocean, that dwarfed his own core, making it seem insignificant. He closed his eyes and entered his mindscape. His shock could not be described. Gone was the sewer. In place was a white wasteland as far as the eye could see. He thought of his chakra core, and it appeared before, his normal core still being the sky blue he remembered. Behind his core appeared a broken cage covered in chains. In the cage was the ocean he felt. It was more than 100 times the size of his human core. He moved towards it and placed his hand on the surface. He did not expect the chakra to burst free from the chains and cling to him like an attention-starved puppy. This is all the Biju chakra and the nature energy in an entire world. The strength of a world, compressed in one being. How the hell did this happen? Dumbass Uchihas with their dumbass tricks. He was flabbergasted. The density, the pure mind-numbing power, and the mixture of chaos and peace was an unimaginable feeling. He could feel it constantly strengthening his body, sharpening his already inhuman senses, and purging imperfections and all the scars he had. It was merging with him. He couldn't allow that. Not now. The amount of chakra he would release would attract too much unwanted attention. He ripped his hand from the world-sized globe and started pacing. His mind filled with plans and ideas. I have the Sharingan. Does that mean I have the Rinnegan too? Kami, this is annoying. Naruto pumped more chakra into his eyes as he felt them shift to Sasuke's eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. That was now his. It was all so confusing. He kept pushing more chakra. His vision sharpened and he could feel the power these eyes had. He conjured a mirror in the mindscape and looked at the reflection. He had expected to see 1 Rinnegan, not 2. It must have been because of the mixture of his and Sasuke's genes. He suddenly stilled and ripped his forehead protector off. What looked back at him was a slit in the middle of his forehead. He groaned, "God-damned rabbit bitch." He tried willing it open. That didn't work. He tried prying it open. That just hurt like hell. Like always, chakra was the solution. He pumped more chakra than most cages had into the slit and saw it open menacingly. 3 concentric rings on a blood-red background with 3 rings of slow-spinning Magatama was what greeted his other eyes. A pulse of chakra burst forward from his body, lifting up the dust around him, making grass grow around him and animals flocked to him. The infamous Eye of the Moon had graced the world once again. This meant he could go to his own dimension. Good, that was one problem solved. He rubbed his chin and looked up. He felt like Shikamaru, constantly looking at the clouds. He was about to say his friend's catchphrase too. The valley was still fully intact. He needed more investigation. It could be from something silly as it being rebuilt, to time travel or even another reality. Troublesome. His lips twitched and he laughed at the absurdity of it all. He left his mindscape and looked at the tattered clothes on his body. That wouldn't do. He discarded them as he concentrated. Using his specialized henge, traveler's clothing appeared on his body. A simple beige shirt, a black loose-fitting pair of pants and a pair of simple slippers. Luckily his chakra control wasn't as shot as he expected. He did not want to attract too much attention. He stopped pumping chakra to his eyes and conjured a long white cloth. He wrapped it around his forehead and locked away most of his chakra to human senses. Being found out by a censor was not something he wanted. He made a hand seal and shifted into another person, another perfect henge. Choosing an inconspicuous look with simple black hair and bland facial structure. He readied his muscles and blasted forward, against a tree and destroying it. He groaned, and looked in the sky. He could almost hear fate laughing. Body strength and speed quadrupled, looking back at the sizable crater he had left behind, quintupled. He whined and started running, this time a far slower speed, matching an ANBU's pace. Naruto reached the commercial path to Konohagakure no Sato in a few minutes. He slowed dramatically knowing the seals that covered all of Konoha and its surrounding areas. Reaching a normal civilian's running pace, he jogged towards the big gates of the village. He slowed down further the closer he got until he was walking briskly. Finally reaching the gates he joined the line that had formed to enter Konoha. He looked at the Chunin who were inspecting everyone's documentations. His thoughts halted. Documentations. He was glad he was at least still the same idiot. He pushed his hand into his pocket and started creating a fake document, a combination yin-yang manipulation and an undetectable amount of chakra. He calmly walked forwards as the person before him was stopped by the ninja. Just as the person was let through, Naruto finished his forgery. He stopped forwards to the ninja and smiled. The unknown Chunin smiled back and spoke, "Good morning, sir. Documentations, please." Naruto fished into his pockets and handed the man the so-called documents. The ninja looked at it and examined it. He nodded and handed back the paper. Naruto folded it up and put it back in his pocket. "Everything checks out, you're welcome to come in. Enjoy your time," the Chunin said and beckoned forth the next person. Naruto calmly walked in the village and looked around him. His eyes fell on the Hokage rock, noticing that there were only 4 figures on it. Silly rebuild idea was crossed off then. Time travel or reality travel were the only options left. He kept walking and moved towards the public library. That was the quickest way to find out if it was reality or time travel. His actions would depend on what he found. Naruto walked into the public library. As he walked behind a long bookcase he conjured 5 clones, all with different looks, and commanded them to read about the history of Konoha and the elemental nations. The original grabbed a book about all the cages and sat down. Opening the book he started browsing through it. Activating his Sharingan he used his specialized henge to cover them up. 2 hours later Naruto had almost read all the history books in the public library. Grabbing the last book, a biography of the life of Namikaze Minato and his accomplishments, he opened it and started reading it, going through it in a frightening pace. Namikaze Minato, child prodigy. Genin at age 10. Chunin at age 11. Jonin at age 13. Damn, Sama was really a genius. Sensei of Hitaki Kakashi, blah blah blah. Youngest Kage ever at age 19. Wow. Blah blah blah. Vanquisher of the infamous Kyuubi no Yoko at age 21. Husband of Uzumaki Kushina, the Red Death. Wasn't that classified information, that was different. Father of 2, Namikaze Menma and Namikaze Mito, containers of the yin and yang halves of the Kyuubi no Yoko respectively. His thought process halted suddenly. Calm down, it is probably just your imagination, yeah. That's it. Just read it again. Father of 2. Oh no, Namikaze Menma and Namikaze Mito. What the hell? How did this even happen? I need to get proof. He stood up suddenly, his chakra fluctuating without his consent. The chair he sat on clattered to the ground. He cursed and put it back before he set the biography back in its original place. Naruto willed his clones to stop existing. A rush of mainly unnecessary information flooded his brain. He groaned. The Sharingan made his clones remember everything. It was even more taxing now to use the Kage Bunshin. He quickly left the library and walked into a back alley, making sure there wasn't anyone who could sense him. He created 10 clones. 3 were to go to the Hokage mansion, 4 were to go to the Uchiha compound. He hadn't found anything about the massacre after all. The last 3 changed into insects. They would serve as his information gatherers. The disguised Naruto walked out of the alley and started to walk to the gates. His chakra was getting unruly. He needed to let it fuse with him soon. He walked out of the village, and as soon as he was far enough away he used the same speed he had used when traveling to Konoha, reaching the Valley of the End in the matter of minutes. He couldn't feel Uchiha Madara's hideout here. It meant that he was dead, or it wasn't here. He hoped the first. He cancelled his henge and ripped away the bandage before burning it in his hand. His chakra was almost bursting out of him. He needed to do this quickly. He pumped chakra into the slit on his forehead. It opened and pulsed in power. Naruto called out the technique that made him want to pull his hair out when fighting Kagaya. Amanamanaka, he spoke. Naruto pumped more and more chakra into his third eye as he was teleported into his dimension. His eyes had already turned a pure gold with power. He was just in time. Chakra burst from his body, destroying the wilderness-centered dimension he had entered. He willed himself in his mindscape and conjured the chakra that was almost bursting from his body. The cage, that was now even closer to full destruction, appeared before him. He waved his hand, the chains collapsed, the cage turned into dust and the chakra pulsed before moving too fast. It pulled him into its core. The terrifying energy was even more powerful. He inhaled, sat down and crossed his legs. This was going to take a while. He started purposefully absorbing the chakra into his being. He felt it strengthening every little aspect of him. He pondered if his personality would change even more before dismissing it. While Naruto in his mindscape was calm and in peace, his body had been completely obliterated. It was being destroyed and rebuilt every few seconds, bettering itself every time. It took a whole month to absorb the all-powerful chakra of the world. Naruto's mindscape had drastically changed in the last months. It had changed to a copy of the Biju's birthplace. It fit after all. In a circle around him sat the 9 beastly siblings. Naruto had accidentally recreated them when he started absorbing their chakra. The Naruto in his mindscape opened its eyes. Gone was the slit in his forehead. His normal eyes consisted of the Rinne Sharingan now. Chakra rippled calmly along him. The Biju stirred at the godly presence but didn't wake. Being absorbed, destroyed and recreated was an incredibly tiring process after all. Naruto hummed and looked around. He hadn't gotten the memories of his clones yet. He needed to leave his dimension, it seemed. He sighed and opened his real eyes. This time that burst from his body wasn't calm. It had cratered the floor under him, destroyed the nature and killed all the wildlife, on accident. He clamped down on his chaotic chakra, forcing it back under his control. It seemed control did come easier in his mindscape. What would he be able to do if he let chakra loose under his control? He chuckled. Naruto opened the portal to the real world again and stepped into it before calmly walking out the other side, but back in the Valley of the End. His clone's memories flooded into his mind. Interesting. Naruto didn't have the Byakugan, so he could not see 360 degrees. He didn't like that. He deactivated his Rinne Sharingan and a Byakugan was willed into his eyes. Before he just had half the power of a god. Now he was a god. His imagination was the only factor he needed for his power. He had more chakra than all the humans and the Biju combined, times a 100. He didn't even have a chakra core or tenketsu anymore. Only when he willed them to exist they would exist. His body was a pure chakra construct now. He had to get used to suddenly being able to see all around him. He could see a team of 5 Anbu rapidly approaching. He must have said of a seal somewhere. He really was an idiot. He clamped on his chakra even more. The minuscule amount of chakra that anyone exudes, human or animal, was for him low cage level, which was more than enough to activate the seals. They would check out anyone who had such high chakra levels, hoping for allies and if it was an enemy to take them out. This was an ideal situation to be integrated into the village without forcing his way in. He put all of his chakra, which was a lot, behind lock and key, only leaving around middle cage amount and letting it circulate around a fake chakra system he created on a whim. He willed his body to de-age, making him look like a 12-year-old with a lot of chakra. He sharpened his nail and ripped his side open viciously, making it look like a katana had done the damage. He pulled his left arm out of its socket and laid down. He was bored. Hopefully the Anbu would offer entertainment. He deactivated his Byakugan and azure eyes greeted the world. The 5-man squad of Anbu flashed into the clearing, the chakra saturating the air making them shiver. Almost automatically all of them were drawn to the bloody boy breathing roughly and leaning on his arms. They approached carefully. Naruto's eyes snapped up. His eyes perfectly imitating the fear that one would have after being attacked. He chuckled to himself. He was already less bored. The captain of the squad spoke gently. Calm down, we're not going to hurt you. There was a high density of chakra sensed here and we were told to investigate. Can we take a look at your wound? It looks pretty bad. Naruto whimpered in pain. Oh, he was good. The ANBU's eyes softened. They felt sorry and wanted to help. Nobody liked seeing a child in pain. Naruto knew. He didn't have to see it. He could feel every little thing that they did. Naruto sat back and hissed before moving his hand away from his side. The captain signaled to the rhino-masked Anbu to give him first aid. Her hands glowed green with the Shosen Jutsu. The captain started talking. Can you answer some questions while Rhino heals you? Naruto nodded, happily sighing as the pain slowly started subsiding. The captain started. I'm guessing you were attacked, right? Nod. The captain signaled the rest of his squad to search the surrounding areas, and put on a gentler voice. Okay. Can you tell me your name? Do you know why you were attacked or who they were? Naruto answered softly. My name is Naruto. He stumbled over his words, the blood loss making him lightheaded. I don't know, there were 3 people. They were trying to get me to join their village, I think, but I didn't want to. Then they attacked me. I just managed to barely get away. Before the captain could ask another question, the rhino-masked Anbu gently grabbed his arm. It's out of its socket, Naruto-san. Do you think you can let me put it back in? Naruto nodded and the Anbu moved her hands, popping the joint back into its socket quickly. Naruto screamed in pain and, accidentally, let loose a burst of chakra. The captain's eye widened. His ninjutsu reflexively appeared in his hand as the rhino-masked women sped backwards quickly. Damn, he could be an actor. The remaining members of the squad appeared back into the field as the chakra dispersed. The ANBUs shared the same thought. How could someone so young have so much chakra? The rhino-masked women gently walked forward as Naruto stood up. Naruto bowed down in thanks and started limping away slowly. The captain called out. Wait, you're injured. You can't travel like that. We can take you to Konoha and you can get treated. It was an ANBU's task to make sure the citizens of not only Konoha, but the whole land of fire were safe. The child didn't look trained except for a strong body and he just had a soft spot for children. If the child chose to go the ninja way he would also be a huge asset to the village. Naruto looked back and hesitantly nodded his head. Are you sure? I don't want to be a bother. Yuvalreya. He stopped mid-sentence as his legs gave out under him and he lost consciousness. The Anbu captain lifted Naruto up on his back and side, signaling to the other members of his squad to head out. He made sure Naruto was firmly situated on his back before he sped forward in the direction of Konoha. 10 minutes later they arrived in Konohagakure no Sato, making sure to not aggravate Naruto's injuries. They arrived at Konoha's hospital and left Naruto in the care of a medic before reporting to their cage. The lion-masked captain commanded his comrades to go back to the headquarters while he reported to Yondaime-sama. He shunshined into the Hokage's office. If you got your assignment from the Hokage you reported back to him, otherwise it was the Anbu commander or Nara Shikaku if the previous wasn't available. Lion shifted to one knee, showing his respect to the strongest ninja in the land of fire and more importantly his cage. Namikaze Minato did not react when he felt one of his Anbu enter his office. It was an occurrence that happened all day through. He spoke with clear amusement in his voice. At ease, Lion. Report. Minato lifted his hands under his chin. The Anbu twitched and rose before speaking. Squad Omega left immediately after receiving mission number 1648 as, we reached the Valley of the End and found a young wounded boy, aged around 10 to 12. No clear shinobi training. Muscle mass that was often seen on one though. We engaged and I questioned him while I let Rhino give him basic treatment and let the other members search the perimeter. Possibly a member of the Kagaya clan, white hair and a strong body. The chakra flares our sensors felt came from the boy himself, Hokage-sama. The Anbu took a breath as Minato lifted his eyebrows slowly and inquired. Biju presence detected? The Anbu shook his head negatively and continued speaking. No, sir. Biju presence could not be detected in his body. He told me that he was attacked when 3 foreign shinobi tried to convince him to join their village. Possibly Otogakure, no definitive proof. He managed to get away with wounds and that's when my squad found him. Presumably his chakra increased his speed to escape on instinct or he knew how to himself. Afterwards he lost consciousness and was brought to the village where he is now under treatment. Minato dismissed the Anbu and sighed before seemingly speaking to no one. Get me Yamanaka Inoichi. One of the hidden ANBU's presence left the perimeter to do his cage's bidding. Naruto awoke to a bright light, his sensitive nose twitched at the medicinal smell. Definitely the hospital. He sighed and looked around him carefully, making sure not to aggravate his injuries. He felt someone, around high Jonin level, approach the door. The person came in and almost unnoticeably halted in the door before keeping going and sitting down on one of the chairs. The man spoke. I'm Yamanaka Inoichi, head of the analysis division. I'm here to see how you're doing. Naruto nodded and responded, already having thought of a story to tell. He needed something to offer Konoha if he wanted to stay after all. Kagaya Naruto, pleased to meet you. Kagaya Naruto smiled cautiously at the head of the analysis division. Yamanaka Inoichi. He needed to make a good impression on the Mind Walker, otherwise staying in the village would be a lot harder. Konoha was his home, no matter in which universe or reality he was. Inoichi grabbed a small notebook out of his pocket. Do you mind if I write down what you tell me? Getting older does affect your memory, it seems. Naruto chuckled and rubbed his side. That's okay, Yamanaka-san. The Yamanaka nodded and a pen appeared his hand. Naruto twitched, feeling an object getting pulled out of a storage seal felt strange. Can you tell me how you got those injuries, Naruto-san? Naruto nodded and retold the story he had told the Anbu captain, the Yamanaka not looking surprised in the least. It seems he was briefed before. UGHH. He hated mind games sometimes. Inoichi spoke. I need to ask, have you had any ninja training? The Anbu who found you told me that the chakra that was sensed came from you. People around your age don't have such dense chakra without harsh training, and you said your name was Kagaya Naruto, as in the Kagaya clan? Naruto twitched and his eyes widened almost unnoticeably. Inoichi was a Jonin, of course he noticed. He already knew that Naruto had received at least some sort of training. The medics had informed him of the growing tenketsu and core that showed the use of chakra control exercises. Naruto started speaking, his chakra fluctuating under his skin. When I was younger, I was trained. His voice hardened and he looked down. My parents had passed away when I was small and my uncle told me that I would be an asset to the clan from that day onwards. They started my training when I was 5 years old. Inoichi's eyes softened. Were you born with your clan's bloodline? Naruto's head snapped up, almost looking like he had been visibly struck. He nodded solemnly. Inoichi wrote down what he had found while calmly waiting for an answer. He guessed that he was. All clan members with the infamous Shikatsumiku that had been found had a lighter shade of hair and Naruto's was a pale yellow. Naruto hesitantly nodded and spoke. Yes, I was. Inoichi looked back up and put his notebook away, the pen disappearing into nothingness once again. He had heard and seen the brutal training the Kagaya members who were born with the Shikatsumiku bloodline received. That was the curse of the Yamanaka, knowing things you'd sometimes rather not. Would you be willing to demonstrate it, Naruto-san? Naruto looked down and lifted his arm up. A white bone quickly appeared from his hand, slicing the skin open. He absorbed it again as Inoichi was finished examining it. The Mind Walker hummed softly and spoke. That must have been very hard for you. Thank you for sharing with me, Naruto-san. I appreciate it. If there's anything you want to add, you can now. Naruto sighed tiredly, looking older than he was supposed to. Would it be possible for me to stay in Konoha? I'll see what I can do, Naruto-san. Naruto smiled, this time more genuinely. Inoichi returned the smile and he stood up. He bowed his head and slowly left. Yamanaka Inoichi knocked on the sturdy seal-covered door that was the entrance to the Hokage's office. He heard a soft, "Come in." He opened the door and nodded his head in respect to both the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and the Yondaime Hokage. I apologize if I'm intruding, Inoichi said sheepishly. The Sandaime chuckled and shook his head. Don't worry, Inoichi. How is little Ino doing? The Mind Walker reflexively smiled and started rambling. My little princess is doing good, Sandaime-sama. Training very hard, wants to be just like her daddy, I'm so proud. He gushed unashamedly. The Sandaime's hearty laugh filled the room and Minato smiled. Ah, to be young again. Minato told me about your assignment. I'm undoubtedly curious about a young man with enough chakra to rival a cage. Inoichi noticed his gushing and rubbed the back of his neck, before turning more serious. He acts like a normal boy for his ego, maybe a little more serious and mature than others. Nothing to be noted otherwise. After we met, I had asked him about his wounds, which, as he told me, were caused by 3 foreign ninjas. I inquired about any ninja training that he had received and his name, Naruto Kagaya. He immediately became more guarded, possible signs of early age abuse. He told me that his training started at age 5, after his parents passed away. The Yondaime grimaced at the possible abuse and early, seemingly forced, training. The world was such a dark place. The Sandaime nodded solemnly and spoke. Any signs of instability? Konoha's safety was his #1 priority after all. Inoichi shook his head. No, he seems fully in control of himself. Furthermore, when asking about his clan's bloodline, he jolted upwards and his chakra became chaotic, but still remained under his control. It must have been something tragic. He hesitantly told and showed me that he did possess the Shikatsumiku. Minato rubbed his face with his hands. He started speaking. He may be the only surviving member of his clan left. Integrating him into the village would have a plethora of advantages. Do you think it would be worth it, Inoichi? Inoichi nodded. He knew the boy the best of all the people in the office. Before leaving, he had asked me if he could stay in the village, so I would say so. He seems hopeful that he can stay. Hiruzen rubbed his goatee and thought out loud. He has absurdly high chakra levels. The only coming close at his age would be your children, Minato-kun. If persuaded to become a shinobi, he could become an important asset, and the possibility of the Kagaya clan becoming a clan of the village would have its advantages, too. Minato nodded at the advice his predecessor had imparted on him. He looked towards Hiruzen and started speaking. Could you meet him soon, Sandaime-sama? A shinobi he could look up to may help him choose to become one himself. You could make him feel more at home. Hiruzen nodded and chuckled. It's Hiruzen, not Sandaime-sama, Minato-kun. I'll make sure to visit him as soon as possible. Minato chuckled. Never, Sandaime-sama. If that was all, Inoichi, you're dismissed. Inoichi bowed and shunshined away. The two cages started speaking about other matters again. While Inoichi was informing the 2 strongest shinobi in the Land of Fire, Naruto was using all his willpower to stop anyone from feeling the fluctuating Biju chakra inside him. Ichibi no Shukaku was awakening. Being the one with the least chakra of the siblings made it possible for him to recover quicker after being remade. Naruto entered his mindscape and was immediately pounced upon by an overexcited Shukaku. The screams of joys it was releasing wasn't something he expected. What he was screaming surprised him even more. "To-chan! To-chan!" Naruto huffed and mumbled, his voice being muffled by the layers of sand. He grew agitated and teleported out from under the excited Biju. What do you mean, To-chan? Rikudo Oji-san isn't here, Datbeo. His frustration manifesting in his verbal tick, the Biju stopped and moved closer, his eyes examining him. You feel like To-chan, so you are To-chan, Naruto groaned. Great, now he had a huge sand puppy at his beck and call. He would act the way though. Shukaku seemed calmer than before, he seemed happier. The Biju were his family, he would treat them like such. Probably the weirdest family in existence, but that's what made them awesome. Shukaku created a sand platform and lifted Naruto up. Putting its head down, he waited. Naruto, getting the idea, huffed and started petting the colossal Biju. He smiled as he saw Shukaku's tail wag. Puppy indeed. It seems the fluctuating chakra of the Ichibi had finally calmed down. At least he could be mainly himself with the Biju. He had more than enough chakra and power to destroy the world. Didn't mean that people would really want to spend time with him. He needed to gently become a presence in Konoha, and to do that he needed a story. People wouldn't accept him if he conquered the world and became a second Otsutsuki Kagaya. World peace was still his goal. He needed to do it in the right way though. The world wasn't as black as white as used to think. Becoming a god does make you think after all. Naruto created a huge ball in his mindscape. He needed to think, and the Ichibi, while adorable, was also distracting. He flicked the ball with his finger and it shot off into the grass fields surrounding the Biju's birthplace. Fetch, Shukaku. That would keep him occupied. Shukaku let his second creator down gently before shooting off in the distance. Naruto smiled. He needed to get some control over his new bloodline. He needed to show some proficiency with it, and that is how he spent the night in his mindscape. Practicing the Shikatsumiku and conversing with the Ichibi no Shukaku. Again, Naruto awoke. He opened his eyes and saw darkness. That was new. He touched the white hard shell and he felt it rush back in his pores. He shuddered and hugged himself. That felt disgusting. His chakra must have been instinctively made a protective barrier while he slept, but chakra on its own was not sentient. What the hell? Another mystery. He saw 3 people looking at him. One he recognized, the rhino-masked Anbu. The other 2, he vaguely remembered, they were medics. That was for sure. Naruto smiled sheepishly. Good morning? The female medic's hand twitched. Good morning. She seemed agitated. Naruto groaned to himself. Was it his destiny to annoy every woman he met? We've been trying to break that shell covering you for hours, we even had to ask assistance from the Anbu. She huffed and signaled to the women next to her. The women calmed down significantly. I'm Nohara Rin, your assigned medic. You already know Rhino and this Yakushi Kabuto, an intern. Naruto recognized her. She was Kakashi-sensei's teammate, just older. She signaled to the only other male in the room. He walked from behind Rin, pushed his glass up and nodded in greeting. Naruto had to stop himself from losing control of his chakra and absolutely butchering the glass-wearing snake. He looked down to hide his anger before masking it and looking back up sheepishly. Sorry. It happens automatically when I sleep. I probably should have mentioned that, I guess? The woman's eyebrow twitched. Wrong choice, Naruto. He wanted to hit himself. Probably, I guess. I just wasted 2 hours on trying to break it. The sensors thought you had died, they couldn't feel anything. I have never lost a patient and I wasn't planning to lose one today. Not happening. That surprised Naruto. A manner to hide his chakra fully from sensors without seals or anything alike had a number of battle advantages. The women huffed again and thanked Rhino. The Anbu nodded her head and left to her previous tasks. She calmed down completely and nodded to herself. Well, originally we were here to give you your final examination. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly as the woman continued speaking. After your examination, you will go to the Sandaime Hokage. He has asked for your presence. Naruto nodded. The woman moved closer, her hand covered in a bright green glow. Lay back, and try to relax. I'm going to use a deep diagnosis jutsu to see if there has any lasting damage or problems. Naruto laid back and felt the familiar tingle of medical chakra covering him. The woman hummed and nodded to herself before canceling the technique and clapping her hands together. No lasting damage could be found. Your shoulder will be sore for a couple of days, but otherwise you're as healthy as ever. I've left some clothes in your shower, and Anbu will come to get you in 10 minutes. Make sure that you are ready. Naruto nodded and thanked the woman before standing up and moving towards the shower. He wondered why Hiruzen himself wanted to speak with him. He turned the water on and moved under the warm stream. He sighed happily and washed away his sleepiness. After cleaning himself, he turned off the water and used a small fire jutsu to dry himself. He dressed himself, and just as he finished putting on the second sandal, a cat-masked Anbu appeared in the doorway. He repeatedly told himself the same thing, don't be an idiot. Come with me, please. Naruto nodded and followed the women towards the cage's office. On his way, he had seen a lot of familiar faces, just younger. They arrived in ample time and the Anbu knocked before opening the door and letting Naruto in. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded towards her and sent a burst of chakra through the Anbu seal located on her arm. You're dismissed. Naruto moved forwards and bowed deeply. It's an honor to meet you, Sandaime-sama. Naruto could not only feel but almost taste the man's overwhelming chakra. He was probably one of the only ones in the whole continent that could possibly defeat him if he was not careful. With his chakra, senses and strength locked away at least. The man chuckled and smiled. No need for that, Kagaya-san. Rise. How has Konoha been treating you? Naruto tilted his head. Good, Sandaime-sama. I am grateful for being treated. I'm glad to hear. Hopefully the medics haven't scared you off yet? They can be a little overbearing. Naruto reflexively rubbed the back of his neck and smiled nervously. Hiruzen made a sound of mock horror. They did, huh? Not all our shinobi are that overbearing. Quirky, certainly, but aren't they all? Naruto relaxed a little and nodded. It's a part of the lifestyle. Would you like to sit, Naruto-san? We have some things to discuss. Naruto moved one of the chairs and sat down. He felt Hiruzen look him up and down. This was going to take a while, it seemed. May I ask, why am I here, Sandaime-sama? The possibility of you being offered asylum in Konoha, Naruto-san. As it stands now, The Kagaya clan is under the banner of Kirigakure no Sato, disregarding that the Yondaime Mizukage was the cause for the demise of your clan. If a Godem Mizukage should take up the mantle, they could demand the return of their village members, with the threat of breaking the thin alliance we have now. My question here is. Hiruzen moved his left hand to his goatee and stroked it gently in thought. Naruto stared at the elderly man, waiting for his response. What could you offer Konoha and its people that would allow us to deny the Mizukage? If they demanded their people back, that is, would it be worth it for Konoha to deny them? He hadn't seen this side of the Sandaime often, politically strong and confident. The loss of all his friends and family had hit him hard in his own dimension. He liked it. Naruto hummed. He needed to make sure his answer was perfect. He answered. For one, the Kagaya clan is considered to be one of the strongest clans in Kirigakure. Kenjutsu and Taijutsu prodigies came from my clan, in bulk, not counting my clan members with the Shikatsumiku. He took a deep breath. The members born with the bloodline, while rare, were abnormally powerful. We have been frontline fighters since the creation of our clan. Our bodies are stronger, faster and more durable than others, even more so with those who manifested the bloodline. Hiruzen nodded and lifted his eyebrow. While that may be true, Naruto-san, that is far in the future. It would be certainly valuable for Konoha if that happened, but what can you, yourself, offer? Naruto nodded in agreement. What the Sandaime had said was true. The backlash of betraying Kirigakure would be damaging. While I have not been fully trained, my chakra levels are abnormally high. They have always been. Konoha itself has a fair amount of taijutsu and kenjutsu experts, but Konoha does not have a lot of cage-level experts in those regions. The only ones that came to mind, who are higher than the normal cage-leveled ninjas in their respective expertise, are Uzumaki Kushina and Maeda Gai, both specialized in kenjutsu and taijutsu respectively. I am still young and yet I have more chakra than the majority of Konoha. It will only grow more. I offer Konoha a possible, no an eventual high-level taijutsu and or kenjutsu expert. Naruto took a deep breath. The Sandaime looked mildly impressed. He continued. Furthermore, our bodies, certainly when covered and strengthened by our bloodline, are fully capable of fighting against and with Jinchuriki without being drastically damaged in the after effect of the highly acidic chakra. Hiruzen looked thoughtful and nodded. Your arguments have certainly been thought-invoking, and you certainly made some good points. Before making a decision, I'd like you to take a full Shinobi placing test. Afterwards, we will come to a decision on this matter. Naruto sighed and nodded his head. He would agree to that. It wasn't a bad trade-off. Offering asylum to a member of another village's clan wasn't something that was done often. Hiruzen flared his chakra gently and an Enbu appeared next to Naruto. Cat, take Naruto here to the Shinobi placement grounds. When Naruto and Cat arrived at the tree-covered grounds, he laid his eyes upon two male shinobi. The Sandaime Hokage and a random Chunin instructor. Cat guided him towards them. The Sandaime greeted him and asked the Chunin to explain the tests. Good afternoon, Naruto-san. I am here to test your capabilities and limits with chakra. There is a total of 4 tests that are taken. The man pulled a complex seal out of his jacket and showed it to Naruto. This here is a chakra output seal. It measures your amount of chakra and your control of it. The amount and your control will be shown on the seal after you have pushed enough chakra into it. Just push your chakra into it and increase it slowly till it stops examining you. Naruto nodded and took the seal in his hand. The Chunin gave him the go-ahead and he started pumping his chakra into it. Knowingly he decreased his control forcefully to low genin level and leaving his amount the same. He felt the seal brush past his fake system and examine it. After pushing more and more chakra into the seal, it grew brightly and stopped. Naruto handed the Chunin back the seal and he read the outcomes out loud. Naruto-san has high cage chakra containers. Contrary to that, his control finals out at low genin. The next test will be a simple body strength test. The Chunin led Naruto and the rest to a big stone that laid in the middle of the clearing. This is a stone which measures the amount of pressure one can release in a single strike, one without chakra and one with chakra. Punch inside the red circle and it will tell us your final outcome. Naruto nodded determinedly. He needed to at least show the strength that befitted one of his clan. He moved into a simple taijutsu stance and striked forward, slamming his fist into the stone and creating a small dust trail behind him. The circle flashed red, high genin strength with no use of chakra. The Chunin looked flabbergasted. Having such strength without the use of chakra at his age was almost unheard of. The only coming close at his age would be Rock Lee. Next time use a full chakra-fueled punch, Naruto-san. He moved back, tensed his muscles and started pumping his chakra through his body. The power of a punch did not only come from moving your arm, you needed momentum. His chakra exploded around of him, denting the floor and blowing away the stray leaves on the inn. He sped forward and slammed his fist against the stone as the air around it seemed to disperse around the glowing fist. The circle flashed red, again. High Jonin strength. Even the Anbu seemed impressed, well as impressed as one could look with a mask covering them. As the Chunin finished picking up his jaw, he spoke again. The third test is a speed test. Chakra usage is necessary. It is a 1 km sprint. The timer will automatically stop when you cross the finish line. The amount time needed to pump the chakra through your body is also calculated in the timer. They moved towards the running field and Naruto stretched before moving towards the starting line. He breathed in and moved his chakra into his legs as quickly as he could. The timer had started, 0.5 seconds had passed. He shot forward, cratering the ground, and every time his feet touched down he pumped noticeably more chakra into his legs, making him shoot forward even faster. He slid to a stop as he turned and saw the cratered ground being regenerated, possibly a hidden seal. The timing seal made a sound and flashed the final time. 29.758 seconds, low Jonin speed. The Hokage nodded his head. He was on the same level as young Rock Lee, while still having his chakra. He would be a man to feared if trained correctly. One final test. The lowest ranked shinobi in the clearing spoke. That was outstandingly good, Naruto-san. The final test will be a spar. Knowing your current fighting prowess, it will be between yourself and Anbu Operative Cat. Nothing higher than C-ranked techniques allowed. Bloodlines allowed and no killing moves. They moved to the sparring grounds as Naruto got ready, examining his soon-to-be opponent. She was clearly stronger than him. Chakra supposedly more refined and controlled. Shinobi had to look underneath the underneath. It could be a test to show one's response to stronger opponents or anything alike. The two opponents moved a good distance away from each other. The Sandame stepped forward, clearly being the proctor of the soon-to-be match. Your match will start when the seals around the training ground activate. The seals will show a countdown and you will be able to move as it finishes. A gigantic 3 filled the air above Naruto. He tried moving, he really couldn't. 2. He felt the seal creating the protective barriers around the clearing. 1. The seal materialized and he could move again. His chakra flooded his body and he sped into the forest, feeling the cat masked Anbu hot on his tail. She was gaining on him, damn. He picked up a rock as he was running, covered it with his chakra and threw it behind him. Naruto stopped in the middle of the forest, where there suspiciously weren't any trees. The Anbu entered the clearing. Hand seals blazing and a spray of water rocketed towards him. Naruto smirked. His plan was working. He used the holy Kawarimi no jutsu and switched with the stone he had thrown, destroying the stone in the process. The Anbu inwardly cursed. She got tricked by a teen. She felt his chakra disappear and appear behind her. She turned quickly and saw him moving through the seals for an earth-nature jutsu. While what she said was true, Naruto had no plans to just use elemental ninjutsu. Bone unnoticeably ripped from his feet and moved underground. He shuddered. Still felt disgusting. Earth walls extended around her as the spear shot from the underground aiming to pierce her. She was undeterred. Breaking the bone wasn't a possibility. So, she jumped up, the walls not covering her last way out. Naruto appeared above her, already blazing through another jutsu. He spat out a ball of wind as the Anbu reached for her katana. Now he knew who she was. Azuki Yugo, Konoha's resident kenjutsu mistress. Damn, if she managed to come close he would certainly lose. She swung her blade, it whistled through the air as it split the jutsu in half, it fell apart right after. Only serving as a cold breeze. They both landed, she sped forward and swung her blade towards his side. A sharp bone erupted from his arm as a makeshift blade, covering the Anbu and himself in blood. He blocked and they entered a furious kenjutsu match. The resounding metal against not-so-metal sound filled the clearing. He was clearly at a disadvantage, not being able to use killing hits and anything over C rank. The Anbu was clearly more experienced and skilled with a blade than he was. He huffed. He had shown ingenuity, speed and strength. That wasn't enough. At the next clash, he purposefully left his left side undefended. The Anbu took full advantage. She swung her blade towards his side, planning to draw first blood. She did draw first blood. What she hadn't expected was bones erupting from the wound, capturing her blade and sealing the wound. She let go of her katana. Summoning her spare ninjutsu, she swung in a circle, forcing him to disengage. That showed his survival capabilities. Naruto exhaled heavily. He had never fought with so many disadvantages. Anbu were scary. He sped through hand seals and stomped his foot down. 4 earth walls surrounded him, this time not forgetting to cover the upper part. He felt Cat hack away at the earth walls, only draining more from his core to keep it in place. He grabbed the sword that was glued to his side and threw it to the side. He huffed and felt his arm almost being ripped apart as bone covered his whole arm. Defensive capabilities. He had created a giant circular shield that was anchored to the floor. His other side ripped open, bone blades forming slowly, covering him almost completely. The wall crumbled and what met the Anbu surprised her. A giant shield had been created from bone. That was new, must have hurt like hell too. The blood covering the floor told her that it probably did. She moved around, he moved too. The shield completely blocking him, his other sides was guarded with a bone blade. Clones were not an option. She sped forward, she still had her superior speed. As he moved to defend, she was already at another position. The shield seemed to slow him down too. Perfect, she raised her speed even more, her ninjutsu only being able to create small cuts in his steel-hard skin. She huffed, over time he'd lose enough blood and chakra. This continued for the next few minutes. Hopefully he showed his endurance with this one. It certainly hurt like hell. Every time she nicked him he had to cover them with even more bone. She was getting tired of his defending, she'd end it soon. Defeating an Anbu would be too suspicious. Final assault it was then. The following time she appeared before him he moved noticeably faster. The shield blocked her and clamped down on the ninjutsu. He felt a seal activate close behind him. It disappeared and appeared in her free hand. Damn, her katana. He filled his shield with his chakra as blades shot out fast, not fast enough. She was faster, her katana vibrated with chakra and was pressed into one of his major arteries. Every kenjutsu expert worth their money had a retrieving seal. Of course, he had lost. Do you yield, Naruto-san? Naruto nodded. I yield. The seals covering the clearing flashed before disappearing. Naruto absorbed his bones back into his body and collapsed on the ground. Cutting his senses and strength really affected him harshly. He needed to get used to it. It didn't help that almost all of his techniques were above A rank. It was good enough and it needed to seem authentic. He had shown all the good qualities a shinobi should have to be an asset to a village. Sarutobi Hiruzen was a man not easily surprised or impressed. He had almost never been both at the same time. Kagaya Naruto was an enigma. The chances of him being a spy were low. The seals around the village did not detect any kind of suicide seal on his body. Cyanide pills were worthless. Medics had a counter against those. Every Jonin knew the counter. It made them completely redundant. A sleeper agent was a possibility, but he was already too well known. Sleepers were usually people who faded in the background. Maybe, just maybe he was a boy searching for a home. Disregarding that, the child was only 12, yet already stronger than most Chunin and maybe even some Jonin. He had fought evenly against one of Konohagakure's best Anbu. Even if she wasn't using all of her strength, he was sure Naruto wasn't either. Almost all the Shikatsumiku techniques were aimed to kill and destroy after all. He remembered one of the only people his second sensei, the Nidaime Hokage, had been wary of was the clan leader of the Kagaya clan. Decisions. The seal collapsed and Hiruzen strode forward. He dismissed the almost pale-faced Chunin casually. When the retired Kage arrived, he saw Cat help Naruto stand up. He smiled. I'm impressed, Naruto-san. You are far stronger than you let on. Hiruzen looked towards the Anbu. On what level did he perform, Cat? All in all, Sandaime-sama. Around High Chunin. Naruto nodded to himself. He had fought at the perfect level then. Hiruzen nodded. Just as I thought. I have come to a decision, Naruto-san. Naruto panted loudly, his breath labored and heavy. This was one of the strongest opponents he had ever fought. His clothes were ripped and he was dripping blood. Naruto roared, His chakra exploded around him in a terrifying corona of sky blue chakra, cratering the ground under him. Chains, not made of chakra, but of pure bone, exploded from his back and whipped at frightening speed towards his opponent. A memento of the technique his mother had used to save him when he was just a newborn. His opponent, the shield of the Biju, Ichibi no Shukaku, did not disappoint. Like his namesake, it conjured a shield, made completely of hardened sand with just a wave of its hand. Naruto smirked. His bones could conduct chakra even better than chakra steel could. He pushed his chakra into his rapidly approaching chains as they sharpened and sped up. They shot through the hardened sand like a hot knife would through butter. Shukaku startled, and before he knew it the chains had him in their grip. The Ichibi tensed and moved suddenly. The bones anchoring Naruto to the floor broke and he shot towards the giant tanuki. Naruto closed his eyes. This was going to hurt. His chains were not as strong as the real deal. Shukaku, like the gentle giant he was, hugged him. Well, that was unexpected. He should have expected it though. The raccoon would glomp him as often as he could. The giant startled again, this time for a different reason, and spoke. "To-sama." Naruto nodded. "I know, Shukaku. I felt them already." An unknown had infiltrated his newly acquired apartment. Naruto's eyes snapped open, his senses going haywire. The unknown felt empty, devoid of emotions. His eyes hardened. Root. Shimura Danzo had already found out about him, damn. He felt the presence move closer. He couldn't use any chakra. That would warn them him. He evened out his breathing, closed his eyes, and just as the unknown was moving his hand to place a seal on him, he acted. He grabbed the Root Shinobi's arm, flipped them around, the Root member now laying on his bed, and before the white masked shinobi could activate the suicide seal implanted on all members of the Foundation, Naruto had knocked him out. Naruto sighed and sat on the ground. He could absorb the boy's soul. Danzo would get suspicious though. He groaned. Genjutsu wouldn't work. The seal would still stop them from speaking. He really needed to learn some fuinjutsu. The last option was to make him act like a spy for him. That would again need genjutsu, which Danzo would find out. Naruto delved his senses deeper into the shinobi. He knew Danzo's conditioning didn't work fully with everyone. He moved the boy's mask away and stumbled back. It was Sai. Emotionless, creepy Sai. This was even worse. He groaned louder and looked at his ceiling. He should really just get rid of fate. He was a god, he could do that, right? Naruto took a deep breath. He could convince him to his side. He knew Sai, maybe even better than this Sai knew himself. Naruto startled and his eyes sharpened towards the Root member. He felt an emotion. Anger. He could work with anger. First, he needed to work around the suicide seal. 5 purple flames lit on the tip of his fingers. He was glad Jiraiya had taught him it. Gently placing them on Sai's abdomen, he twisted his hand. The 5-element seal was finished. That would disrupt his chakra. Naruto waved his hand and 2 small seals scribbled on chakra paper appeared before him. He looked them over, having absolutely no clue what they meant. He at least knew they were a chakra suppression seal and a chakra absorption seal respectively. He slapped the chakra suppression seal on Sai's forehead and he placed the absorption seal next the 5-elements seal. That would make it absolutely sure he had no grip on his chakra at all. Just to be sure, Naruto moved Sai's jaw downwards and looked into his mouth. There, a small pill inserted in his tooth. He pulled it out and looked it over. This wasn't a normal cyanide pill. He absent-mindedly destroyed it. It wouldn't matter anyway. Naruto sighed. Hopefully this would be enough. He pondered. Probably wouldn't be. Again, for the second time this night, bone chains erupted from his back and fully encircled Sai. Now, this would be enough. He chuckled to himself. He was awesome. Sai awoke groggily, his chakra not responding to his call like it used to. He felt sluggish and tired. Where was he? What had happened? Oh, he remembered. He had received a mission from Danzo-sama concerning the Shikatsumiku user he had found out about. He had broken into the apartment of his mission. He had just about to place a seal on the boy, and then it all went dark. His eyes shot open. This wasn't good. Had he been caught? He couldn't see, it was too dark. The Yondaime had a possible counter-seal to the cursed tongue eradication seal that would keep him alive. He would probably spill. Everyone eventually did. If he didn't, they still had a clan full of mind walkers. This was really bad. He calmed down significantly. Sai's tongue moved to his hidden pill, and all the calmness was gone, just like that. It wasn't there, surprisingly enough, his face still staying completely blank. Naruto looked at Sai interact, he had barely felt any emotions from him. Anger being the most predominant one, no matter how small it was. Good, the conditioning hadn't fully worked in this reality either. He was still salvageable. Naruto, deciding to stop tormenting Sai, flipped his bedside light on. Sai's eyes shot to his instantly. He didn't speak, just waited. Naruto looked him up and down, it was the Sai he remembered, just younger. Naruto, after a minute of silence, finally spoke. "Hello, Anbu-san. May I ask what you were doing in my apartment?" Sai didn't speak. Silence was the most dangerous, but also the best option when caught in a mission. Playing silent, huh? If you were worried, I'm not going to interrogate you, Anbu-san. I'm Kagaya Naruto. You probably already knew that if it was your mission, right? Naruto stood up. You know, it would be so polite to tell me your name. Calling you, Anbu-san, gets repetitive. Still not talking, you're no fun. You know, Anbu-san. I knew someone just like you. Naruto stared deeply into his eyes, he was talking about the other Sai. Always silent, emotionless, always fully in control, but I can see it, Anbu-san. I can see the anger, the sadness inside of your eyes. Sai startled unnoticeably to the human eye, to a god's eye, it was as clear as day. No one, not even Danzo-sama, had known of his remaining emotions. His mask was perfect. He spoke his first words since waking up. Who are you? Like I said, I'm Kagaya Naruto. Who are you? You're not part of the normal Anbu. Naruto hummed. He couldn't show all of his cards just yet. Sai seemed to ponder his question. I'm operative number 89N. That was at least something, not much, but he was talking. How to proceed further? The seal on his tongue wouldn't allow him to speak about the foundation. Naruto sat back again and looked out of his window. It was the middle of the night. He had enough time to convince the rude shinobi. Did you receive a time limit on your mission, number 89N? Still nothing. He couldn't say anything at all. Naruto huffed and stood up, went to his small kitchen and grabbed 2 bottles of water. He returned to his room and made his bones return to his body. Sai was basically immobile anyway. Want one? Sai looked at him incredulously. Well, as much as one with such an emotional blockade could look incredulous. You never accepted food or drinks from an enemy. Naruto twisted the cap off, took a sip and swallowed audibly before offering it to Sai, again. This time, Sai took the offered bottle and took a sip himself, still making sure it didn't taste funny. Naruto chuckled and opened his own bottle. What precisely is your mission? No answer. Well, it was worth the try. Surprisingly, Sai stuck out his tongue and pointed at it. He was finally getting somewhere. Naruto made a weird face. A seal? Is that why you can't speak? Nod. Naruto already knew that, of course. He could remove the chakra from it, but Danzo would find out instantly. Oh lord, Naruto slapped his hand against his forehead. He was stupid. He could just change the incriminating part of the seal to himself instead of Danzo. Then Sai could just speak normally about Root. Sai was not loyal to Root because he wanted to anyway, it was because he needed to. Naruto moved forward. It was time to test one of his new techniques. Perfect control over any and all chakra. Number 89N, I'm pretty sure I can change your seal so you can speak freely. Number 89N scoffed, removing the seal is impossible, it takes the life of the one wearing it. I never said removing, I said change. I can change the seal's intent to block you from talking about your organization to myself, in exchange for your loyalty to me. I am not like Danzo, I treasure my comrades. The seal was filled with Danzo's chakra, that's how he kept them from saying anything against him. He had perfect, absolute control over his chakra now. It would work. Smart bastard. Sai's eyes widened, almost looking hopeful, before masking it again. It was too good to be true. Do you ask me to believe that? The Hokage has been trying for countless years? Naruto started getting frustrated. He had patience, but he needed to see if this would work. It would mean he could absorb all chakra-based seals. Just give me your damn tongue already. He groaned. That sounded so wrong. Sai looked at him blankly. Not like that, Datbeo. Damn it. Just do it. He wanted to pull his hair out. Sai still managed to annoy him with his stupid blank face. Sai kept his tongue out and Naruto pressed his finger into it. This was going to be annoying and time-consuming. He needed to filter Danzo's chakra out of it while filtering his own in it, and also making sure not to destroy the seal. Furthermore, he needed to do it in a painstakingly slow pace to not make the seal go off and kill Sai. This is going to hurt, number 89N, like hell. For the third time this night, bone chains ripped from Naruto's back and made sure Sai could not move. Slowly, Naruto absorbed Danzo's chakra from the pink appendage he was touching. He shuddered. This felt even worse than absorbing his bones back. Danzo's chakra felt absolutely vile. Sai's mouth opened further in a soundless scream. Sweat dripped from his pores. He could almost imagine how painful it was. Naruto ignored it. He needed to. He could not afford to lose his concentration. 2 hours later, the sun was just starting to rise. Naruto stumbled back and gasped. He started coughing. A black fluid dripped from his lips. His body didn't accept Danzo's chakra. He coughed again, spat out a glob of the thick black fluid and stood up straighter. Hopefully that was the last of it. He looked down. Sai had lost consciousness halfway through. The pain had been too much for him to handle. He looked even paler than he usually did. Sai stirred and awoke. His eyes shot open suddenly. He surveyed his surroundings quickly, like all shinobi did when waking. Naruto spoke excitedly. Good. You're awake. Let's test your new seal, number 89N. Who do you work for? Sai started speaking, expecting an excruciating shock, his voice blank. I work for Shimura Danzo. He opened his eyes and looked down at his hands. There was no shock, no excruciating pain. The seal that had haunted him since it was placed on him didn't work anymore. His eyes filled with tears. He could live for both his brother in all but blood and for himself. He wiped his hands over his eyes, moved to his knees and pressed his head against the hardwood floor. This man had given him a gift he had never expected to receive in his remaining time on this earth. Freedom. Sai spoke, emotions, not heard since his brother passed away, filled his voice. I am infinitely grateful to you, Kagaya-sama, thank you. He knew he still need to go back to the root base. He didn't care. It felt like an enormous weight had been lifted from his shoulders. It was worth the pain he had to go through. Naruto smiled and placed his hand on Sai's shoulder. Stand straight. My comrades don't bow before me. They stand beside me. Now, can you finally tell me your name? Sai stood up slowly, his body still aching from the procedure it had undergone. Naruto extended his hand and waited. Sai firmly took the offered hand into his own and spoke. I am Sai, Kagaya-sama. It's an honor to serve you. Naruto smiled widely. It was his first night in the new reality and he already had someone on his side, and it was one of his best friends, too. It couldn't have gone any better. Naruto let Sai's hand go and sat down. Did you have a time limit to your mission, Sai? Sai grabbed his water bottle and sated his thirst. His throat was absolutely parched. He looked out the window at the rising sun. Yes, 2 more hours from now. My mission was to spy and gather information about you, and if it was possible to take you to Danzo. His voice turned dark at the last word. That bastard had ruined his life. Naruto spoke. Well, taking me to this Danzo clearly didn't work. Going to the Hokage wouldn't work. He'd let a Yamanaka browse through your memories, including the ones we just made. I don't want to get found out yet. I don't know any memory suppression seals either. Any suggestions on how to proceed? Sai flipped his bottle and hummed. Going to the Hokage wouldn't work then. I'm guessing I can't speak anything concerning you, instead of Danzo, now? Naruto nodded. Until I can get rid of that effect of the seal you won't be able to write, speak or sign anything concerning me. The other parts of the seal are also under my control now. Danzo will get suspicious if you don't report. Going rogue will go even worse when he finds out the tracking seal doesn't work. You could act as my spy en route. That's the safest option. Sai sat down too. It probably is the safest, Kagaya-sama. Danzo is the most paranoid man I know. He has backup plans for backup plans. After every mission, the low-ranked root members get their memories sealed so they can't speak of it, even if they try to. Only on a new mission would the memory suppression be removed. Only missions like mine don't get removed from them, because they're information gathering, Kagaya-sama. Naruto groaned. That was certainly new. Danzo didn't do that in his reality. The bastard was even more paranoid. He's a real piece of work, this Danzo. Make sure he stays interested in me. Tell him that you saw me training on a higher level than I should be able to. You need to make sure to stay assigned to me, even if it is between missions. Sai. Can you do that? Sai nodded. It wouldn't be easy, but he could do it. Yes, Kagaya-sama. If you receive any other missions, report them to me. It's almost time to go back, Sai. I have faith in you, TT Ibeo. Sai bowed down deeply and shunshined away, appearing before one of Danzo's secret bases. Sai kneeled before his leader, eyes down and arms behind his back. He had to make sure Danzo didn't suspect anything. Danzo sat silent in his throne, his breathing not making a sound. He was one of the strongest shinobi Konoha had produced. There were few who could match him. He spoke, a gravelly voice met Sai's ears. Report. Sai twitched. The urge to rip the man's throat out was high. He couldn't though. Danzo would have him incapacitated before could blink. He spoke, voice blank. Kagaya Naruto has done the shinobi placement test under the eyes of Sarutobi Hiruzen, Anbu operative Cat and Hajime Heiko, Chunin instructor. He scored high Chunin level, definitely a prodigy. He sparred against the Anbu and was defeated after some time. Speed and strength are abnormally high for his age, low Jonin and high Jonin level respectively. I could not track back to Hiruzen's office, without the risk of being discovered. I think the Sandaime has given him refuge in Konoha for the time being. After he left the cage tower he headed towards an abandoned training field. Here he made it clear that he was not using his full strength against Anbu operative Cat. His speed was high Jonin and his strength mid-Anbu level. Afterwards, he moved to his apartment and I watched him meditate until dawn. I'd put him around mid-Jonin level, Danzo-sama. Danzo hummed. Possibility to be integrated into Root? Yes, Danzo-sama. Sai kept quiet afterwards. You only said what he wanted to hear. No more, no less. Being disciplined was never fun. He could still remember having to discipline a new member. That wasn't fun. Danzo spoke again. You're dismissed. Go to your quarters. You will proceed next week. He may have been set off. Sai sped away and left Danzo in the darkness. Shinobi could last without sleep for weeks if necessary. They usually never did. Cages could fight for days after all. Only when it was necessary they stayed awake. There was a chance the Kagaya clan member had noticed his shinobi following him. He stood up and sighed, signaling for one of his shinobi to follow him. He pulled his upper robe off, revealing a scarred, but fully muscled upper body. He had to stay in shape, looking down at his new arm, and training was also the best way to get used to the new appendage. The shinobi stood in front of her leader. She was one of the stronger members of Root, one of the only to barely match the bandaged man. Barely being the important part. Danzo disappeared to her eyes and she only managed to dodge a knife hand aiming for her throat because she had seen it often enough. A combination of visual genjutsu and high speed, he used it often. Danzo liked to train his strongest shinobi personally. Her hands moved. She grabbed the offending appendage and twisted it around his back. Danzo was not deterred. He twitched his arm that was against his back. It popped out of its socket with an audible pop before he spun and backhanded the clearly weaker shinobi away. She hit the floor hard enough to crack it. She got back to her feet, her broken arm not bothering her. Her hand shone green with the Shozen Jutsu as it healed in a matter of seconds. She was not weak. Being at high Anbu level was something not many even reached. Danzo, like all cage-level shinobi, was just that terrifyingly strong. The Yami no shinobi popped his shoulder back into its socket and let his chakra run loose. The floor cratered and she knew she was screwed. She was glad the walls were chakra resistant, otherwise they'd have all of Konoha on them in seconds. Danzo, just like last time, disappeared. He appeared before her and let loose a point-blank wind style. Vacuum bullet. No hand signs needed, she cursed. It was clearly a weakened version of the technique. The real technique would have cut her into pieces before she knew it. Her ninjutsu appeared in her hand and she spun it in her hands quick enough to disperse the incoming wind, tunneling her chakra into the blade to help it along. She swung her blade forward, aiming for his throat. He moved to defend, before she sent a pulse of chakra into her wrist. More than it could handle, it dislocated and made the blade suddenly shoot downwards to his stomach. It was her newest technique. Danzo-sama wouldn't be fast enough to dodge, she made sure of that. She was right, he couldn't dodge. He just channeled an inhuman amount of chakra into his hand and grabbed her blade. She could clearly hear the blood dripping on the floor. she had at least managed to wound him. Danzo moved his hand to her stomach quickly, his hand vibrating with chakra. This was going to hurt. The cage-level shinobi slapped his hand against her stomach roughly. First, she hunched over, the chakra being unloaded the second he hit her. Next, blood escaped her lips. He twisted his arm roughly, she heaved. Splattering roots leader in her blood, countless vessels in her stomach ripped open. Lastly, she shot backwards, her ribs buckling under the pressure. Her flight was halted by a dense wall. She arched her back in pain before losing consciousness. Cages could slaughter whole platoons of high-leveled shinobi. At her level she would never win. Danzo took a breath and flared his chakra softly. A medic root shinobi appeared before him. He indicated towards the bleeding women on the floor. The medic nodded and moved without a word. She knew her task. He grabbed his robe and moved back to his office. She was far from strong enough. He looked at his bloody hand. His army was growing stronger by the day. Soon all of the elemental nations would be under Konoha's banner. Like it should have been from the beginning. In Root, you have no name. You have no feelings. You have no past. You have no future. There is only the mission. The roots will soon envelop the whole elemental nations while the tree blooms. That is the mission. Back with our resident yellow-haired god. Naruto moved down the street. It was still early in the morning. Shops and restaurants were just starting to open around him. He didn't recognize all of them, another thing different in this reality. His eyes almost visibly lit up as he spotted the giant banner of his favorite food stand already serving a small amount of people, Ramen Ichiraku. With a noticeable spring in his step he moved towards the stand. He walked in and sat down on a seat in a corner of the store. He had such fond memories of this humble little place. He looked around, reminiscing of all the times he ate here. An elderly woman with long gray hair in a bun pulled him out of his thoughts. He didn't recognize her. She spoke gently. "Hello, dear. What can I get you today?" Naruto looked around, his senses clearly feeling a male and a girl in the back working on food. Good, Tucci was still fine. He was like family to him. "Miso ramen, please." The woman nodded before calling his order in towards the back. Within a few minutes Aoyama came from the back and placed a steaming bowl filled with his favorite food in front of him. He almost drooled. He missed ramen. It was the food of the gods, he chuckled to himself. Now, it really was a food of the gods. He declared it as such. He could do that. He was a god. He looked up. He had missed Ayame a lot more than the ramen. She was the older sister he never had. "Thank you," he trailed off, not knowing her name. She smiled her usual kind smile. "Ayame." "Thank you, Ayame-san." She nodded, dusted her hands off on her apron and looked around the store. Not many people were in. She didn't recognize this young boy. "I haven't seen you around Konoha. Are you new around here or just a traveler?" Naruto split his chopsticks, intoned his usual, "Itadakimasu," and brought the noodles to his lips. He sucked them in and almost groaned. A man should not be separated from his ramen for longer than a week. It was torture. He heard Ayame speak and responded after clearing his mouth. "I'm new here. I got permission to stay in the village a few days ago. I'm Naruto. Nice to meet ya, Datbeo." He cursed to himself. He couldn't let his annoying verbal tick resurface this much. Sai had already noticed it and Ayame had too. Uzumaki Kushina was still alive. She had a verbal tick. It wouldn't mean that they were related, but it would seem strange. He needed to use it less often. Ayame made a strange face. She'd heard the almost exact phrase from their best-paying customer, Uzumaki Kushina. Must have been a coincidence. "It's nice to meet you, Naruto-san. Are you alone in Konoha or do you have any family?" Naruto hummed while eating his ramen almost lovingly, indicating her to wait a sec. She smiled. He spoke. "I'm alone. I'm an orphan, kinda." He made a weird face. He was pretty sure he still had the genes of Kushina and Minato. He couldn't call them his parents, because they were but also weren't. It was confusing. He choked in his food. He had two siblings now, kinda. Ayame startled and quickly grabbed a glass of water in front of him. "Are you okay, Naruto-san?" He coughed and took a sip of his water. "Yay, just went in the wrong hole." She sighed and leaned on the counter. "So, do you know what you want to do in the village? Are you going to take an apprenticeship or go to school?" Naruto downed his glass of water and wiped his mouth on his sleeve before answering. I'm going to enter the Shinobi Academy. Aren't you too old to enter the academy, Naruto-san? Naruto pondered her question. He kind of was too old. The usual starting age was 8. Only when you had prodigious skills or got a recommendation of someone above Chunin level was there a chance you would get allowed to join early. Civilian usually didn't know that even 4-year-olds were allowed if they had the capabilities. Luckily, he had the skills and he had gotten a recommendation of a cage, something that had never happened before. I can join the academy because I've already been trained. Short answer, didn't explain too much, also not too little. Perfect, he smiled. Ayame smiled sadly. He was a nice kid. She had heard enough stories about the hardships of being a shinobi. Enough shinobi visited their shop after all. She spoke. Good luck, Naruto-san. Do you know what direction you want to go? He looked down. His ramen was almost finished. He didn't even know what he was going to do. Becoming Kage wouldn't be impossible, but incredibly hard. For people who joined the village, it was incredibly hard to become a Kage. Enough laws kept them from it. You needed to be part of a powerful clan with a bloodline, had to have a seal placed on you for 5 years by the previous Kage and a dozen more. If it was a war period, you were instantly filtered out of the options too, no matter how powerful you are. After all of that, if you were family of a Kage, you automatically had higher chances, and he would bet his pinky that Konohamaru still wanted to be a Hokage. Maybe he could become Anbu Commander. He wouldn't be very free in his business though. Anbu Commander was the highest rank after Kage and Sannin in the village, and it would mean he had the whole Anbu force at his beck and call. Decisions. Jonin Instructor was a no-no. He was more than powerful enough, but he was too impatient. Naruto hummed and smiled. I want to become one of Konoha's 2nd division members, and eventually one of the captains or even the commander. Ayame looked surprised. Every village had them. Countless Jonin, Chunin and Genins under countless division captains who then served the commanders of their division, abnormally strong members of the standard shinobi force who did not join Anbu or had another occupation, who then got their orders from the Hokage. It was created for war, and to make sure that the Kage didn't do any useless tasks. There were more than 10,000 shinobi in Konoha. One man could never do all the paperwork for them. The captains did the paperwork for their members. The commanders received mission requests and declined the unnecessary ones before giving the meaningful ones to their Kage, who did everything else. Even when there wasn't a war, it still worked like that. It was the quickest and most efficient way after all. She knew Konoha's 3rd division commander, the short to mid-range platoon as they were otherwise called, Uzumaki Kashina. That was the only one she knew. They weren't exactly public knowledge after all. They only became public knowledge during war times, and only because they were the leaders of their platoons. The other commanders were all speculation. She spoke. That's an honorable goal, Naruto-san. She beamed and grabbed his, now, empty bowl. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. Naruto fished in his pocket and grabbed the amount of money he needed and placed it on the counter. He nodded his head. It's been very nice. He started walking out and waved back. Gochisu-sama. Naruto knocked politely on the Hokage office's door and waited before it opened automatically. This was going to be the first time he met the Yondaime Hokage. This wasn't his father. He was Kagaya Naruto. Naruto stepped into the spacious office as he felt the door close behind him. He bowed at the waist and kept his eyes down as he reached the middle of the room. It's an honor to meet you, Hokage-sama. The man chuckled. He felt an unnoticeable amount of chakra move to the Kage's throat. It was a genjutsu, more specifically a sound-based calming genjutsu. The man was a real genius. It was basically unnoticeable. The chakra control needed to achieve that must have been at least medic level. The genjutsu slid off him like water. It would have worked on anyone below Jonin. Namikaze Minato spoke, the chakra leaving his throat. At ease, Naruto-san. Take a seat. The man waited for Naruto to sit before speaking, again. We're here today to finalize your integration in Konohagakure no Sato and your possible shinobi career. Naruto nodded. He thought so. Yes, Hokage-sama. The Hokage opened a drawer of his desk and gently grabbed a few papers. Contracts. Naruto clearly recognized the Daiwaimo's stamp on the corner. The man placed the papers on the desk and kept speaking. These are the refugee contract and the clan integration contract. The refugee contract, in short, says that as a member of a war-torn village Konoha can offer you refugee and that you fully agree to join Konoha of your own will. Being of a high-ranked clan in Kirigakure makes it harder for us to offer you refugee without the whole clan name becoming a part of the village. He took a deep breath. This is where the clan integration contract comes in. This says that the Kagaya clan will join Konohagakure under the will of the last remaining member of said clan, making you patriarch of the clan. The Kagaya clan would become a minor clan until you are of age, then it will become a major clan of the village, if the clan has proved its loyalty to the village, where you would then be offered a seat on the clan council. The man handed the contracts to Naruto and smiled. It had been easy to get the contracts from the Daiwaimo. The most influential man of the Fire Country had almost laughed in glee at the thought of such a powerful clan becoming part of his village. He saw the boy in front of him flip through the pages of the contract. Naruto wanted to groan. He hated politics. He consoled himself knowing that it was needed to help him along with his goals. He read through the contracts carefully. He wasn't in the mood to be tied to something he didn't know. Breaking a chakra and blood contract was annoying. He finished reading both of the contracts, nothing suspicious in them. Just basic things concerning his clan, himself, trial period, etc. He laid them back on the desk. The Hokage spoke again. If you agree with the contract, we'll sign them now before we continue speaking, Naruto-san. I agree with them, Hokage-sama. Minato smiled and grabbed a small black box. He opened it and pulled out a dark pen covered in seals. A chakra contract pen, the only way to be absolutely sure if a contract was legitimate. He handed it carefully to Naruto and told him where to sign and what to do with the pen. Channel your chakra into the pen. It'll light up and absorb some of your blood to make sure the contract is legitimate. Naruto channeled his chakra into the pen as it lit up and felt cut his hand and absorb some of his blood to use as ink. He signed his signature on both contracts. They shined bright white as the chakra was absorbed in the paper. Finally his name turned black. The Hokage followed and signed it himself. It glowed, again before settling. They both stood up. Minato extended his hand. It's an honor to welcome the Kagaya clan, and yourself in Konohagakure no Sato, Naruto-san. I hope that you will enjoy your time in the village. Naruto smiled and took the larger man's hand into his own. He was now an official part of Konoha. Thank you, Hokage-sama. It'll be an honor to serve you as my kage. The man smiled, disconnected their hands and sat down before grabbing the contracts and putting them away. We've more to talk about, Naruto-san. Naruto smiled excitedly. Acting too mature would get suspicious and he wasn't very mature anyway. My shinobi career? The Kagaya clan member sat down on the chair. Minato nodded gently. Yes, exactly. While it is allowed for refugees to join the shinobi forces, they have a 6-month probation where they will be monitored by Anbu. They will always start at Genin level, but after their probation they can take the Chunin or Jonin test. I know for a fact that you're above Genin level, but since you're still 12 you can join the Shinobi Academy in the remaining part of the final year, which would count as your probation and get you used to the living in Konoha. It will be your choice, Naruto-san. Naruto wanted to laugh. This was absolutely perfect. He'd be able to connect with the next generation of shinobi and clan leaders in Konoha. Naruto nodded. I'd like to join the Shinobi Academy. I know the basics of being a shinobi, but I don't know a lot about Konohagakure. What he said had been true. He only knew the basics of all shinobi techniques. He didn't know any real genjutsu, barely any ninjutsu, and his taijutsu was only good because he copied small pieces of existing styles and mixing it with his own. Minato nodded and grabbed another paper. This time he only stamped it. You are now a student of the Shinobi Academy. You start tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Naruto-san. Report to the front desk and you will be guided towards your class, where you will be introduced to the class by the Chunin instructor. Naruto smiled, stood up and bowed again. Thank you for your time, Hokage-sama. You're welcome, Naruto-san. The door behind Naruto swung open. He stood straight and walked out of the office. Minato smiled. Konoha had another shinobi in the making. Naruto awoke the next morning to the sun shining through his window. He looked at his clock and did a double take. It was already 8:30, damn it. He overslept. He jumped under his shower and prepared for his first day in the academy. He dressed into a simple burnt orange shirt and black shinobi pants that he had gotten the day before. He had left his apartment at 8:50 after finishing his breakfast. Naruto arrived at the Shinobi Academy at 8:55. He was lucky he didn't live too far. He moved towards the front desk and spoke to the Chunin sitting at it. Hello, Chunin-san. Where is the final grade class? I'm the new class member. The man nodded and pointed him towards a class. Naruto thanked him and moved towards the class. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door covering his new class. He heard a, "Come in," and started opening the door. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next part.